"I'm sorry, sir, but this check doesn't look right." With those words, the young bank teller dismissed decades of honor, sacrifice, and service. Retired Sergeant Major Arthur Harrison, 78, stood at the counter with a trembling hand, holding what he knew was a legitimate U.S. Treasury check, his long-awaited retroactive disability compensation. It was money he had waited years to receive, meant to fix his leaking roof and help him visit his grandchildren across the country. But in a shocking display of arrogance and blind policy, the teller fed the check into a shredder, treating it as if it were counterfeit trash. What happened next stunned everyone in the bank. Just minutes after the check was destroyed, the glass doors flew open and in walked federal agents and representatives from the Treasury Department. They weren't there to make a deposit. They were there because someone very high up had received a phone call, a call from a man whose quiet strength once guided soldiers through war zones. That man was Thomas Ashton. At First National Fidelity Bank, what should have been a routine transaction turned into an ordeal that left a decorated veteran feeling powerless. Arthur Harrison, 78, had come in to withdraw $400 from his pension money he urgently needed to purchase medication for his chronically ill wife, Martha. The deposit had arrived as expected, and Arthur, a customer of the bank for over 4 decades, assumed everything would go smoothly. Instead, he was met with an unexpected obstacle. A young teller named Kevin, barely out of high school and clearly new to the job, informed him that an automatic CPU security protocol had flagged the account. With little empathy and a rehearsed tone, Kevin explained that the system had placed a temporary hold on Arthur's account and that no funds could be withdrawn until it was resolved, something he claimed could take up to 48 business hours. Arthur, confused and increasingly anxious, tried to explain that this wasn't just a casual withdrawal. His wife's medication couldn't wait, and any delay might seriously impact her health. But Kevin, visibly uncomfortable yet unwilling to take initiative, simply repeated what sounded like scripted responses. "There's nothing I can do," he said, before sliding a glossy pamphlet across the counter. "You can try calling the helpline listed here, but they'll likely tell you the same thing." The words stung. This wasn't just red tape, it was a moment where compassion should have overruled policy. But for Kevin, procedure trumped personal concern. With no other options offered, Arthur stepped away from the counter, defeated, holding a brochure that promised customer-first service. He knew from past experience that the helpline would only lead him down a maze of automated menus and apathetic agents. What Kevin failed to realize was that behind Arthur's quiet demeanor stood decades of military service, deep connections, and a direct line to someone who could truly make a difference. In that moment, it wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. As Arthur sat quietly on the bank's cushioned lobby chair, helplessness began to wrap around him like a heavy coat. The weight of bureaucratic indifference, the thought of returning home empty-handed, and the memory of Martha's labored breathing clouded his mind. In his hand was a useless pamphlet, its cheerful slogans mocking the urgency of his situation. But then, like a distant bell in fog, a memory surfaced, an old number. Years ago, during a national emergency exercise called Crimson Eagle, Arthur had served as a liaison between the military and civilian financial institutions. It was a short but critical assignment, and during that time he'd worked directly with James Sterling, a senior executive who'd handed him a private number with the words, "Only use this if the system breaks down and someone's being hurt because of it." Arthur had never used it, until now. Pulling out his scuffed old cell phone, he found the contact saved under J. Sterling Omega Priority. With fingers steadier than he expected, he pressed dial. To his surprise, the call was answered immediately, not by an assistant, but by Sterling himself. "Sterling," the crisp voice answered. Arthur straightened instinctively. "Sir, this is Arthur Harrison. We served together briefly during the Crimson Eagle exercise." A pause, then recognition. "Harrison? My God, it's been years. If you're calling this line, something's wrong." As Arthur explained the situation with clarity and urgency, the frozen account, the automated hold, the teller's refusal to escalate, and most importantly, Martha's critical need for her medication. There was a short silence on the other end before Sterling's voice returned, cold and commanding. "I'm 7 minutes away from that branch. Do not move. This will be handled personally." The line went dead. Arthur sat stunned. For the first time all day, he felt a spark of hope. What Kevin and the others didn't realize was that behind this quiet veteran was not just a past, but a network and a reputation earned through decades of service. Sometimes, all it takes is one call to remind the system who it was meant to serve. Precisely 7 minutes after Arthur's call ended, the glass doors of First National Fidelity Bank slid open with a sharp hiss. The quiet hum of the lobby came to a sudden halt as James Sterling, CEO of the entire banking corporation, strode in with the kind of presence that turned heads. Dressed in a dark tailored suit and flanked by 2 stern-looking aides, he walked straight toward Arthur without so much as glancing at the teller counters or glass offices. "Arthur," he said, extending a firm hand, "it's good to see you, but I'm furious it's under these circumstances." His voice carried the kind of calm fury that sent chills down spines. Sterling scanned the room, his eyes settling on Kevin, the teller still behind his station. "You, teller, get your branch manager out here now and come with me." Kevin's expression shifted from smug detachment to full-blown panic as he scrambled to obey. Moments later, the branch manager, Ms. Evans, returned from lunch, only to be intercepted by Sterling's booming voice. "Your office, now! Bring Mr. Harrison's account file." She paled and rushed to comply. Inside the office, Sterling didn't sit. He stood, commanding the room with quiet authority. "Miss Evans? Teller Kevin," he began, his voice clipped and deliberate. "A decorated veteran came in today to withdraw funds needed for his wife's urgent medication. Your systems failed him. Your staff failed him. And instead of finding a solution, you handed him a pamphlet." He turned sharply to Kevin. "Did you even attempt to escalate this? Did you call the veteran accounts liaison? No? Then you are untrained. And you," he turned to Ms. Evans, "are responsible for that failure." Pulling out his secure corporate phone, Sterling made a direct call and had the hold on Arthur's account lifted immediately. "Your funds are now accessible," he told Arthur, "and the bank will cover your wife's medication today and for the next 12 months. It's the least we can do." Sterling's swift action transformed a humiliating experience into a powerful reminder. When true leadership arrives, it doesn't come with excuses, it comes with solutions, compassion, and accountability. The impact of James Sterling's intervention didn't end in that office. What followed was a ripple effect that spread through every level of First National Fidelity Bank. Kevin, the young teller who had dismissed Arthur so casually, was sent home pending a full performance review. Ms. Evans, the branch manager, was placed under immediate scrutiny by the regional operations team. But more than disciplinary action, real change began to take shape. Within days, an internal memo was circulated across the entire banking network, launching the Veterans Priority Service Initiative, a company-wide mandate to ensure that no veteran would ever again be left helpless due to a system error or lack of empathy. This included simplified verification processes for pension accounts, direct access to human representatives for veteran-related issues, and mandatory training for all frontline staff, emphasizing compassion, discretion, and accountability. Meanwhile, Arthur Harrison returned home with the medication Martha so urgently needed. He sat with her that afternoon, holding her hand in the soft glow of their living room lamp, feeling not victorious, but validated. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about being heard. It was about proving that even when the system fails, there must be people willing to fix it. Martha's breathing had eased by the time she smiled and asked what happened. Arthur only said, "Let's just say the top brass showed up." In the weeks that followed, James Sterling personally called Arthur on more than one occasion, not out of obligation, but as an old acquaintance who genuinely cared. Their conversations were short, warm, and often ended with Sterling asking, "How's Martha?" For Arthur, those calls meant more than corporate apologies. They were proof that integrity still existed at the highest levels. While Arthur never saw Kevin again, and Ms. Evans became far more attentive in her role, one thing was certain. Everyone at that branch, and eventually across the entire company, learned a powerful lesson. Systems may falter, but when leadership leads with heart, dignity is restored and respect is earned all over again. Arthur Harrison, a 78-year-old decorated Army veteran, walked into First National Fidelity Bank expecting a routine transaction. Instead, he was met with an unexpected bureaucratic wall. His pension had just been deposited that morning, money he needed urgently to buy life-saving medication for his ailing wife, Martha. but a young, inexperienced teller named Kevin informed him that an automated CPU security hold had frozen his account and that there was nothing he could do. Arthur pleaded, explaining the urgency of his wife's condition, but Kevin merely slid a generic pamphlet across the counter with a customer service number, treating the situation as little more than a policy hiccup. Feeling helpless, Arthur sat on a lobby bench, the weight of responsibility and frustration pressing heavily on him. But then he remembered a number, a direct line to James Sterling, the CEO of the bank's parent corporation, a man Arthur had worked with briefly during a national emergency liaison years ago. Arthur made the call. Within minutes, Sterling himself was on the phone, and within 7 minutes more, the CEO stormed into the branch, bypassing all protocol. What followed was a rare moment of corporate accountability. Sterling personally restored access to Arthur's funds, paid for Martha's medication out of his own discretionary fund, and launched a company-wide Veterans Priority Initiative. That day became a turning point, not just for Arthur, but for the bank itself. Staff were retrained, policy was rewritten, and a powerful message was delivered. No veteran should be sidelined by a machine or dismissed by an untrained teller. Arthur didn't seek revenge or compensation, only fairness and humanity, and thanks to decisive leadership, he got both. The story of Arthur Harrison became more than a customer service failure. It became a lesson in empathy, dignity, and what happens when the right people finally step up. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. James Whitaker, a 74-year-old blind veteran, was making his way across the intersection near Main and Elm, using his white cane, the tip tapping gently as he moved with deliberate care. The war had taken his sight years ago, but not his independence. Locals knew him, greeted him with respect, and often offered a guiding hand when needed. But that day, 2 young police officers new to the force mistook James's white cane for a weapon. Despite nearby pedestrians trying to explain, the officers shouted conflicting commands and, within seconds, one of them deployed a taser. James collapsed to the ground, his body convulsing as gasps filled the air. Before the officers could process the gravity of their mistake, one of the bystanders had already made a call to a number he had once been given by James himself, just in case. That number belonged to an active-duty colonel in the U.S. Army who had served with James and owed him his life. Within 7 minutes, the distant rumble of engines signaled what would become a scene this small town would never forget. A convoy of military vehicles rolled down Main Street, led by an armored Humvee. Soldiers disembarked, their presence calm but commanding. No weapons were raised, but their authority was absolute. The police officers, now clearly shaken, were escorted aside for questioning. A military medic rushed to check on James, who was conscious but shaken. What happened next wasn't a confrontation, but a reckoning. Town officials arrived. The police chief was called from his lunch. Apologies were offered, investigations launched, and the convoy didn't leave until they were assured James was safe, respected, and compensated. For many watching that day, the message was crystal clear. Some men have earned more than medals. They've earned protection, dignity, and the kind of respect that shows up when it matters most. In those 7 minutes, the line between error and accountability was drawn not with anger, but with honor. And James Whitaker, though blind, saw more clearly than most what true loyalty really looks like. It was just a normal afternoon when 76-year-old Vietnam veteran Walter Briggs attempted to cross the street near his neighborhood pharmacy. Blind from a service-related injury, he moved slowly, white cane in hand. But what happened next shocked everyone. A passing police patrol car misinterpreted Walter's hesitation at the curb as non-compliance. Despite witnesses shouting that he was blind, officers demanded he stop moving. When Walter, unaware of the commands, stepped forward, they fired a taser. He crumpled to the pavement, helpless and confused. Within minutes, a retired Army colonel who happened to witness the scene made a secure call. Just 7 minutes later, the street filled with the unmistakable sound of heavy engines. A military convoy arrived. Not for aggression, but for protection. Officers were pulled aside and military medics attended to Walter. What followed was a complete shift in tone. Local officials arrived, body cams were reviewed, and the police chief issued a public apology. The convoy didn't leave until Walter was safely transported home, with federal oversight promised. This powerful story reminds us that true honor doesn't expire with age or disability. Our veterans, especially those who've sacrificed so much, deserve patience, respect, and above all, dignity. Walter didn't shout or resist. His life experience spoke louder than any words. In a world that often moves too fast to notice the quiet heroes among us, may we slow down and truly see them. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know faced a moment of silent injustice? And if you believe our veterans should always be treated with the highest respect, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Because sometimes the strongest voices come from those who speak the least, and they deserve to be heard.